How great is this old pair of Nunchaku that we're looking at here? Once again, borrowed from my sensei. He has an extensive collection. Gonna be doing this video series for a while. And you can see the defining feature here is obviously that the sticks are very short while the chain is longer than normal. So here's a comparison. You can see here that even with the extra long connection, it's far shorter than a standard pair, and that's by design. This design sacrifices reach for portability. It's even easier to fold up and carry than a typical set. And of course, you can see that the sticks swell out significantly to try to make up for the lack of mass. So how does that work out? Well, not too bad, as you can hear. In fact, I suspect the extra long connection works in conjunction with the swelling to try to make up again for the lack of mass. A typical configuration like this just has more wood, right? We'll get back to swinging and hitting with today's pair, including hitting myself, but first. But even standard length chucks can swell out to increase striking power, as both of these show, to varying degrees. The ones on top you've seen me use in action before, and you will again. A white oak pair made in Japan, which I love, and the ones below will show up in a future video. They're also borrowed from my sensei. So yeah, extra small chucks, they were a thing. What's surprising is that they were not, as far as I can tell, an ancient thing. It was in the Bruce Lee-inspired 20th century explosion of popularity with these as street weapons that somebody decided, well, let's really shrink this thing down. Remember that Nunchaku were, as I say, the world's original ASP baton, the original collapsing baton. That's all. It's the collapsing mechanism that wood carving technology allowed for. It can be stored at not half, but less than half the length of an equivalent stick because of the rope. And then this particular design became real important, I think, because of the pocket. In the old days, you would tuck your Nunchaku into a belt, but this design is Western clothing pocket friendly. Reminder as I'm showing, that means it can go from complete concealment to full power strike instantly, something a straight stick of equivalent length could never do. But what about handling in terms of this pair in particular? This right here is the first time I've ever swung these, so not bad. But if you're going to go this fast with a brand new weapon, you'll probably hit yourself in the face like I did right there. I'd forgotten about that, but anyway, that was just a tiny little love tap. Reminder, grain threshing like this is what led to the fighting flail in many parts of the world. And this general design, in terms of dimensions, was unchanged over millennia. So the question then is, well, did somebody cut one of the sticks extra short to make a symmetrical pair? Is that how actual Nunchaku came to be? Nobody knows, and we never will. But it's, some people say it was this kind of a thing here that led to their invention, because if you're threshing grain that's up on a table for you, then you don't need an extra long handle. And this, by the way, is not an illustration from a martial arts book at all. That being said, I mean, this is possible, this theory, but I've never seen anthropological evidence that that kind of threshing actually occurred. Send me citations if you've got them, please. Back to a little bit of hands-on. Again, these feel good. I could see why they caught on in popularity. I remember in the 20th century these being a thing, being in ninja magazines and all that business. This exact type of dimension, especially, I remember always having the studs on the striking surface. But again, as far as I can tell, today's configuration did not exist in the old country like this Sansetsu-kon or Yonsetsu-kon. Obviously, these here have chain and not rope, by the way. Well, how about grappling then, with these different dimensions? Choke, you better believe that would work. There's no doubt about that. The limb trapping, you could trap it, but it doesn't have that nutcracker-like vice grip. The smaller sticks make it even easier to pull off the unsportsmanlike ambush strike. You're crazy if you think that uppercut to the chin wouldn't put somebody's lights out. Well, the double-handed strike feels weird. There's just not enough wood. I mean, it started feeling better as I did it. I was significantly concerned about hitting myself, right? Because it's got different swing dynamics, and I'm swinging it with full power on day one. Meanwhile, it feels devastating when you do that with a regular-sized pair. Reminder, I am anti-twirl when it comes to nunchucks. I think almost all of the problems associated with them go away if you don't do that, but that is part of how they're used, is to visually distract. That plus switching hands increases unpredictability for your opponent. Again, I'm not sold, but, you know, maybe there's something to that. Here's a sped-up sequence just to reinforce the point that you can hit things all day long with a pair of chucks and not hit yourself, contrary to what some people say. In other videos, I and other users have shown ourselves hitting things as hard as we possibly can, unlike here, and doing so without harm. I like the old-timey movie effect of watching this sped up. And earlier in this video and in this sequence here, I've shown myself not doing a figure 8 swing through. I've also done, linear flush strikes and come out fine. What else? Back in the 70s, guys would just carry these around their necks like this and just walk around. Well, if you do, it's real easy to get a strike off and start the fight. Of course, that negates the element of surprise. Here are some heavier power shots. Remember that these are old and belong to my teacher, so I'm not going to abuse them very much. Okay, now you're going to get to see me abuse my body, because what if you can't swing, right? Real close quarters combat and you're holding these. Well, you could double jab, but you can't do that X strike, which is, in my opinion, a devastating point-blank strike that you can do with regular chucks. Throat, sternum, solar plexus, ribs. Test it out on our nice heavy tire. And if that doesn't look impressive, remember this. If you actually try to use just your body, some of you have seen this before, ouch. I did not follow through because all my momentum was stopped dead by that very heavy, dense object. The reverberating shock that went through my body was scary. So let's do it again. I was more careful this time because I didn't want to feel like my shoulder was about to pop out, but you can see how much more trouble I had getting the tire over. It was just very easy with the chucks. But as you saw earlier, I can't do the X strike with this pair. I just can't, and that's a great strike, so I guess what if you just do that? And that'll work. Now, how about if you have to smash while you're holding them collapsed? Definitely works with a normal pair. Yeah, you can hit as hard as you want. Try my left hand. But while I do that, the thing about today's pair is that they're oddly shaped for this kind of application. What is going to happen here? I really don't know. Well, I do because I already recorded this, but you know what I mean. Let's give it a go, because we don't just sit around and theorize on this channel. Ooh, on second thought, maybe I should just sit around and theorize. Yeah, that does not work with these. Single stick? Yeah, kind of. Not really. My right hand still hurt too much to do that technique, though. I'm gonna look like I'm in a weird drum circle, but let me try with standard. Works with those. So, a couple of up-close techniques that you can't do with today's design. But can you use this short-range technique, holding it by the connection and swinging both sticks at once? I'm surprised this worked as well as it did with this shape and size, but it does. And now, because I can't help myself, we'll take a little side trip and check out this monster pair here. I want to use the same technique and see how it goes. These are considerably heavier than even the standard pair. Just for fun, though, let's try the same technique. And you can see how much more wobble there is to the tire. Look at that difference here. These things go from mini to regular to extra large. And while I do a little more striking there from up top, here from the figure 8, I want to talk about two myths that we're going to take on. One, that you can't strike with these because of the danger that they represent to yourself. Here's an image from my original Nunchaku video where I, and this is something others have done too, have struck as hard as possible with these. Like I said, I mean, look how far I've wound back there. Just ridiculously far back. You cannot do that in a fight, and even with that much power, it was okay. The other one is this, that you can't strike, you can't swing if you're too close up, and that's a weakness of this weapon versus a straight stick. It's something proposed by Shadiversity and others, in fact. It really amazes me. If you know weapons, you should definitely know that one of the advantages of a flail is that it's the opposite situation. I don't have to worry about the fact that I'm striking here, let's say accidentally, with the no power part of the weapon. The nature of the instrument takes care of that for me. You're actually going to get a much better strike with the Nunchaku than with a straight stick in this situation here. But the proof is in the pudding. Let's try slow motion so you can see the detail. And yeah, I know that the striking bag needs a new cover. That's what happens when you actually practice with weapons on a regular basis, not just pick them up only when you're making a YouTube video. But what if the Nunchaku with a flail has to wrap around a block, whether weapon or human? Once again, anyone knowledgeable about weapons should know that's an express advantage of this tool. So here's today's pair, same result. Now, that doesn't mean you have to accept this as a better tool than a straight stick. No, not at all. But any analysis of the two, any comparison, must include this difference. And this here is not a staged picture, it's a freeze frame of an actual video striking, so once again, that's a basic feature of flails. Now, you know there's no substitute for at least a little bit of testing on yourself. And I can confirm it does wrap around your body and still strike. My thought was that today's pair is actually better for this too than normal chucks, kind of like a Kasari Fundo pictured here. You know, the longer chain gives it the ability to wrap around more effectively. Not that that's what it would have been designed for. Clearly the ones we're looking at today, they're, like I said, as far as we can tell, a modern invention, and the idea was we want to shrink these down even more, but we have to compensate for the subsequent lack of power. Okay, let's have the wooden portions swell out significantly towards the striking side and increase the length of the rope. Although, I should say chain, not just because this one has a chain, but I think this configuration here, since it was so late in the run of this weapon, was pretty much always a chain. And that's probably why the ones like this that I remember from back in the day always had the metal studs. Once again, another compensatory feature. Well, that is our weapon experiment and story. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.